Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. Hope everybody's having a wicked weekend. So my next tale is viewer requested. This will be from my buddy Glenn. This tale is going to be about June Hibbs from Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. So this kind of tale is it's like a disappearance and a murder case. So this was back in 1976 in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. Now, June was a wonderful woman. She was in her mid-30s, and she was mother to 4 children. John Jr., Blair, David, and a little girl named Alma. And poor June's body has never been recovered, even after all these years. Now, her son named Blair, he was a real estate agent up in Cambridge, Ontario. He offered up a $50,000 reward to any information that would lead to his mom's remains. And over time, the reward was upped to $150,000, just for some hope that it would get information out there and his mom would get a proper burial. Now, June's husband, John Joseph Hibbs, he was a cop in Glace Bay, and he died in 2003 in Cambridge, Ontario, when he was 65 years old, and he had a heart attack. And this guy kind of threw his weight around as a cop, and even when he was questioned later on in this case, it seemed that police kind of figured out that he lied constantly, and he never kept his story straight. And even before he was a cop, he was actually a former coal miner back in the day. June's husband, John, was known around town as a guy who abused his power. He was a short and stocky, in-your-face kind of fella. Pretty much back in the 60s and 70s at Cape Breton, all you needed to do to become a cop was walk upright and hold a flashlight. So this guy just became a hard ass. Now, the Hibbs family lived in the number 11 area of Glace Bay. This was in a bunch of company houses. They were located on Mansfield Street, Dorchester Street, Peel Street, and Industrial Street. The family also had June's younger sister, Diane Campbell, living with them at 34 International Street. Over time, John would make advances towards Diane, and she took to them. So they kind of started having an affair. So this led to a bunch of bullshit there one night, and June ended up going missing. Now, the night in question, June and Eva Moore had left the house of a friend, Joanne, at 206 Wallace Road. Now, they played their usual game of Saturday night poker, and they called a cab when it was over to pick them up. The cab driver was Eva's son, so the cab pulled up front and dropped June off at her place of residence, and they seen her go inside the house. Now, her husband John was working late that night at the Glace Bay police station with a few others that worked beside him. So Constable John Hibbs that night left for home around 12:10 a.m. on March 7th, 1976. He was kind of not feeling right, and he wanted to go home and grab some meds for a headache. So this whole night went into a shit show. Police eventually started to question it, and in a signed affidavit, he recalls this night. He said, quote, "I left my house and went back on my beat. I called from a payphone to see if my kids were in bed. My sister-in-law answered the phone. Her name's Diane Campbell. I asked her if the kids were in bed. She said yes. Get up here right away. June has gone berserk." So I was like, oh? And I went up there. I drove into the yard. I noticed my wife was laying down in the driveway. So I got out of the car and I went up to her. She said, "John, help me." So I started to take her up the stairs. She said, "No, put me in the car. I'll be all right." So I told her I was going to take her to the hospital. She said, "No, I'll be all right." She was bleeding, so it looks like she must have hit her head or something. Now, John said that she was talking to him normal, so she didn't seem too out of it. But police noticed that the constable couldn't keep his story straight. Now, a man named Stan Campbell, he was a prosecutor. He went through the night in question and all the recent activities of John Hibbs, so he began to question the constable. He asked about Diane, his wife June, and about the affair with Diane, as it wasn't really a secret, because he didn't really try to hide it. He asked if he loved June, he asked if he loved Diane, and if anybody else knew about the affair. It was just your average normal interrogation, right? And June was never seen after this night again. It seemed like everything the constable was saying was bullshit. So it's like June just disappeared into thin air. So other questions got fired around about the night that he went home and how his wife's head had been bleeding. Now, Constable Hibbs talks about how he left his wife in the car and went back into the house to find out what happened. He said he couldn't get any information from Diane because she was just very hysterical at the time. He asked his wife June what happened to her. She stated that she was pushed off the step. So he went back in and talked to Diane, and he asked June if she'd like to come into the house. She replied, "No, I'll be fine out here for a while." He said, "Okay," and he left her in the car. And he went back to work his beat, and then he stopped off at the station. And that's when he got a phone call saying that June had taken off with the car. And the thing is, police found out that Constable Hibbs wasn't even walking the beat that night. He had Glace Bay Police Car number 2, which was actually seen that night parked in his driveway at the exact same time that he mentioned, and at the exact same time of June's disappearance. Over the course of the investigation, police noticed that he wasn't keeping his story straight. Everything seemed to be different stories. Now, in a secondary police statement, John Hibbs had more to say on the matter. He said, quote, "In my previous statement, I left out that I picked my wife up from the driveway and put her in the car. The car was our station wagon. I found her at the end of the driveway near the pavement, and I dragged her back to the car. I don't know if she was dead then. She wouldn't answer or talk to me. I went into the house, just asked my sister-in-law what she had done to June. She just said that she was going to drive her to the hospital. She wouldn't tell me what she did, and then I drove out of the yard. I had the car parked on the back end of the driveway, and when I pulled out onto the street, Diane had already left the yard." So the constable is constantly thinking of scenarios. I mean, this guy was a cop. I'm sure he knew how to weasel dick his way out of this situation. So he returned to the police station at 3 a.m., claiming that his wife stole the station wagon and was threatening to commit suicide. And another time during this, he also said that he had to stay home with the kids because Diane was taking June to the hospital, just to look after the head wound. But the thing is, poor June never even made it to the hospital. There's no records of it. She never made it to any hospital in the area, and she's never been seen alive or seen dead since. On Sunday, March 7th, the family station wagon was pulled from the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean. This was at the bottom of a 100-foot drop-off known as the Hub Dump at the end of 4th Street. Next, a clump of hair and June's dentures are found close by, but her body's nowhere in sight. On Thursday night, on June 11th, after 5 days of searching for June, Diane and John Hibbs showed up at the Glace Bay Town Hall. The two had been arraigned before the town clerk and the justice of the peace on charges of capital murder. And the pair were questioned in the same room for a period of 5 hours. Diane later admitted to her sister, Eva Moore, that she struck June in the head with a stick. Police actually think it was a hockey stick. Now, on June 7th, 1976, Diane Campbell went on trial for the death of her sister. Justice Louis Dubinsky was originally to look after the case, but he fell ill, and he passed the case on to Justice Gordon Hart. The funny little thing here is, Justice Louis there, about 5 years prior to this case, he presided on the Donald Marshall Jr. case. So, he was well known for all these different cases. So a 10-man, 2-woman jury was made up, finding Diane guilty of manslaughter, and she was sentenced to 4 years in Kingston Penitentiary. And John Hibbs, he was charged, but he was found not guilty. So at the trial, while under direct examination from prosecutor Simon MacDonald, an officer who worked with John on the graveyard shift had testified that Hibbs did leave the police station about 12:20 a.m. that night, and he didn't see him until 3 a.m. Now, he questioned Mr. McIntyre just a little bit more, and he asked if he heard anything about Hibbs at 3 a.m. So McIntyre said that Hibbs came into the station at 3 a.m. He ventured into the clerk's room, sat down a moment, and he turned the light off, and he told me that I should go home. Now, I told him that it was early, and he went to the back. After several minutes, I put my coat on, and his phone rang. Hibbs answered. He was on the phone 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't hear him talk, but I could see him. But I didn't hear him talking on the phone. I turned to him and asked, "What's up?" Thinking it was a bad call or a complaint. He just motioned for me to keep quiet, which I did. I then went on the phone at the sergeant's desk, picked up the phone, and went to the other line. I heard a female's voice say, "What was that, John?" And then I immediately hung up the phone, and that was it. So as the court case went on, different constables were brought onto the stand, and they talked about John Hibbs. Now, the constables that were on the stand were Joe Melnick and Robert Taylor. They finished their shift about 2 a.m. They hopped in their patrol car, and they got back to the station around 3 a.m. Now, Melnick said that when they got to the station, they were almost at the front door when Hibbs met them and told them about his wife's suicide attempt and that she took his car. So, over the whole court thing, his story was never relevant. It was never the same. And Diane Campbell, she was convicted of manslaughter. She would serve 18 months of a 4-year sentence. John Hibbs was charged, but he was not convicted. So he moved the family to Ontario to be a little bit closer to Diane, and he found work as a security guard. So this was about 6 years after she was released from jail. Then the couple married. The body of June Hibbs was never found. So she was about 32 years old at the time of her disappearance and death. Now, her son, Blair Hibbs, he spent thousands of dollars over the last few decades looking for his mom's remains, which are rumored to be within the area. And the police were alerted to a nursing home expansion project. This was several years ago. It was, they unearthed some animal remains, and the bones that they found actually belonged to the family pet that was actually disappeared the same night as June. Now, Blair and his brother Jack were very young at the time that their mom went missing. I think Blair was 13 and Jack was about 15. And another story came into play. A man named Cecil Mills. He grew up in Glace Bay. He believes that he witnessed the burying of June Hibbs back when it had happened. Now, the Cape Breton Post, a local newspaper back home, they did a story on this. They actually even went out to the burial area that this guy was talking about. Now, it's all overgrown bush now, and it looks a little different. Now, believing they were standing meters from the burial site, he decided to bring the story to the public's attention, mainly because he said, "I'm tired of living in fear, and I'm tired of hiding, and the last 40-ish years, this case has been on my mind every day." And I kind of understand the whole, keeping it to himself thing, because the guy did fear for his safety, and there are bad people in this world. But he just wanted to help the Hibbs family, because they've been looking for June's remains for years. And people have always been skeptical on this guy's claims, but he said he's willing to prove them by taking a lie detector test. So Mills states that it all began one night back in August 1976. He was staying out at his brother's house. His brother was Cyril Mills. It was an old house back on Reserve Street. So he woke up about 7:30, 8 a.m., and he headed out behind the house to pick some blueberries. Now, there's lots of spots back home that you can pick blueberries. Glace Bay is just one of them. I remember as a kid going to Whitney Pier, because there was lots of blueberries to be picked down there. Now, as he gathered his blueberries, he heard some voices while he headed down the little trail. So he heard people hollering and cursing, but he couldn't see anyone. It's kind of like as if they've been in a panic. Now, Mills thought that someone needed some help. So he walked closer, and he came to an opening in the bush. So down that opening was a little area. It kind of had like a shaft door. So he was curious. And there was a big dump truck down that way with about 6 people that he counted at the scene. He noticed their faces were covered, and he wasn't sure why. It was mainly their noses and mouth. So then he thought, they're hiding their faces to cover up the smell of something or the odor of something unpleasant. Now the men removed a green tarp from the truck. It seemed to be made from some army tent material, and it looked like a body was wrapped up in it. He remembers that you could see the human form. Now he saw a man holding a wooden box and a giant cable, and he was walking backwards. He started unwinding the wire, and this was coming from the door opening. So 5 men hopped in the truck, and they left quickly. 1 man stayed behind. He watched the man detonate a device. He blew up the whole shaft door and whatever was put inside. And then the man ended up leaving the area. But Mills stayed until everybody was out of sight. He told his family what he'd witnessed, and they urged him not to mention it to anyone else out of fear for his safety. And there's also some other scenarios on her death. Some say that June's body was buried near Greenwood Cemetery across from Dominion Street. This would be across from the Hibbs home. So the story goes that the body was buried in the bottom of someone else's grave, so it would be sure to be never dug up. There's other speculation is that over the last little while that she was buried in one of the many concrete foundations around Glace Bay, or that she took off with a new lover and left John and the kids. And I can kind of get the family's concern for this guy's safety, but after they read articles about June in the Cape Breton Post newspaper, they started to second guess things. They read about how she was bleeding, how she disappeared that night, the affair with her sister. It was just too much, right? So eventually they rethought this, and they told Cecil to go to police. So he told police about what he's seen, and they figured, the investigation would just keep on going. So he backed off, and he let the police do their thing. Now Blair Hibbs, June's son, he also spoke with Mills, and he thinks the story's credible. Even he flew back to Cape Breton as well, so he could speak to Mills personally on the matter. Now Blair Hibbs remembers his dad, John Hibbs, that he owned a green tent that used to leak all over the place, And that's the main reason why he remembers the little tent so well. A few years ago in 2011, an excavation process started in a different area of Seaview Manor, but nothing came from the excavation. And even since then, people have approached Blair with information on the night his mom went missing. And even since then, it's still an open case since her body hasn't been found. Sergeant Al LeBlanc, who's actually media relations for the RCMP, he says anytime anything new comes in on the case, like info or whatever, it's gathered. They receive it, and then they try to determine its relevance. No matter how much time has passed, it will still help solve the case, so it should be looked into. RCMP confirms they have no plans to excavate any site to look for June Hibbs' remains. Alec Blanc, he made mention that it's important to remember the two people that have been charged in relation to her death. Even though one did fuck all for time, and her husband John had died of a heart attack before charges could be officially laid, the family does appreciate everyone who came forward with info. I know they miss their mom, and they hold hopes to remain that one day this case will be solved, and they can put all this behind them. And that's all I got for you folks. I thank you very much for tuning back in. I'll have some more stories and episodes here for you the weekend here. So I thank you for tuning back into Twisted Tales. Oh, and just some messing around I was doing there. I was trying to get my podcast out there. So I chatted with a friend I met on a Facebook group, and he also does podcasting. Now his podcast called Bucket of Chum, the Shark Movie Podcast. And it's pretty cool. I myself love B horror movies. I live and breathe them. So he talks about shark horror movies. So definitely check him out. So I'll add a link to his podcast in my details of this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little tale about June Hibbs. Have a good week, folks. I appreciate you all. And thank you very much for everything you guys do for me.
My name's Cecil Mills, and I'm near the property that my brother owned on Reserve Street, where I walked from in 1976. And I'm attempting to walk the same walk right now to where I seen what I believe at that time was the body of June Hibbs being put into a mine shaft, and the door blown up, and it's all overgrown. It's unbelievable to see how much changes we had here. But I'm determined to go right to the spot right now. I'm going to get my bearings, and I'm going to try to walk right over the spot that I was at just 38 years ago. Yeah. The area I'm standing right now, at this point, and looking from that roadway, how it goes up, I think I'm in a very general area.
Hey, folks. I just want to let you guys know that, when I did my June Hibbs episode earlier, I did that with research that I found online and, newspaper articles and whatnot, but over time, I found a Facebook group about June Hibbs. I met her son, Blair, in there as well, so I told him that I covered a podcast on his mom, and we got to talking, and he listened to the episode, and there was a couple things that I kind of missed, but with the information that I had, it's all I had to go off of. And we fixed it all up tonight, so I edited our little conversation that we had here, because we had an interview together tonight, and I'd like to add that in for you guys now, and go from here. So, thank you, and I'll post that up here next. Alright, so the other thing we missed here, we were talking about your
Father John and his partner Louis Yates. How they stole goods, and they were pretty much as crooked as they come.
Yeah, they were just thieves, the two of them.
Okay. There was also where I said
he goes by Louis Yates.
Louis Yates. Okay.
Yeah.
And I missed a part in that last episode when I said Greenwood Cemetery wrong. It was actually St. Joseph Cemetery on Wallace's Road, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And the part there where the cemetery where they dug their holes up in the cemetery, now they checked those the rough boxes that were located in the holes, and there was nothing underneath. Your mother's body wasn't there or anything like that. So when they checked under the rough boxes, now that idea was there was no body under the rough boxes. So when a casket would be laid over that, then that would hide a body if originally there.
That's right. That's right. Okay. There'd be a body, the rough box, and the casket would be in the rough box, a lid, and then they'd fill the hole in.
And then, boom, like there's already a body in the coffin, and nobody would expect another body below.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. The other minor thing here, the cab, when Jerry dropped him off, I said that everybody in the cab had watched her go inside, had watched June go inside the house.
That's right. Yeah.
But the only thing was that in reality, they watched her go up the steps and then touch the doorknob.
Touch the doorknob, and then they drove away.
Okay.
And I got that from Jerry on one occasion and from Steve on a separate occasion.
Okay. And then also, there was a part I missed when I said that the judge had stopped going to the... he stopped the case, or he recused himself from the case to go work on the Donald Marshall one. But that issue was because the Donald Marshall case trial, that was actually... How did that go?
So the way that went is Dubinsky was the judge on the Donald Marshall case back in the day.
Mm-hmm. That
case is over and done. Now he's the judge on John Hibbs' case. But Donald McNeil, the old man's lawyer, was the Crown prosecutor on the Donald Marshall case.
Okay.
So the judge and Donnie McNeil, both of them worked on the Donald Marshall case. Judge Hart was sent in, and that's the main reason that Dubinsky stepped down, was Hart was being sent in by Leonard Peace to hear the case. So Dubinsky recused himself, and Hart took over. But it wasn't because he felt ill. Leonard Peace stepped in and said, we got to send John Hibbs back because we can't give them an investigation into the Grace Bay Police Department, which is what the town folks wanted.
Good.
They had petitions everywhere, and people were signing the petitions like crazy. So they wanted the full investigation into the Grace Bay Police Department, and Leonard Peace said, let's charge John Hibbs again and bring him back. And they did.
That was, yeah, okay. So that was when he got the first time that was in Glace Bay, when he did that. Him and Diane got, the 30 days in jail, I believe.
Yeah, 30 days psychiatric evaluation in Dartmouth.
No, that's correct, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's covered, and that conflicted the matters.
Yeah. When I said the RCMP were out for persecution, not prosecution, they flew up to Kingston when Diane was at the penitentiary in Kingston, and they put a letter on the desk in front of her and said, you sign this, you get out, and John Hibbs goes to jail. But she wouldn't sign it, because she knew she was out in 18 months. So she would not sign it. But the RCMP wanted the hanging come up. The town thought that's why they were after persecution, not prosecution.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, too. I mean, because that way, like, even if he was prosecuted, then that would take a lot of heat off the other guys.
Yes.
Okay. And also, like, even going through those courtroom doors there, the police, the overcrowding on the steps was so severe that they had to use a fire hose to spray the people from overcrowding to get you guys into the courtroom.
Yep, yep.
Okay. And we touched back on that. Okay. And we already touched the 30-day psychiatric evaluation. Okay. There was the other time there when the second court date or whatever, after the psychiatric evaluations and stuff, when he was charged for the second time, when you guys pulled up into the parking lot, that people swarmed the car and they were shaking it so bad that you kind of thought it was going to tip over.
That was the first time when they were, before they were sentenced to 30-day psychiatric evaluation. So that was the day it happened.
That was the day it happened, okay.
Yeah. So that day we were bringing into the Glace Bay courthouse.
Oh.
And when we pulled in the driveway, that's when they swarmed the car, and I thought they were going to flip the car over.
Shit.
They were rocking so bad. And they got us into the courthouse. A photographer went to take my picture, and Bobby McLean, the cop at the time, he grabbed the photographer around the neck with the strap on his camera and hauled him into a closet room and said, "You're not taking pictures of that boy." That was Bobby McLean. But he was a decent guy. He was a nice guy.
So they weren't all hard asses.
They weren't all like that. No.
And that's good that they have some good people in this world too. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last
like
thing.
Harvey Calloway, we call him Shaq, was his nickname as a cop. And when I testified on the stand, the old man wouldn't look at me once. When I left the courtroom, I left crying. I walked down the hallway. None of Mom's family would acknowledge me. I walked past them. I found an empty room, and Harvey Calloway, Shaq, came in the room with me. And he kind of consoled me a bit and said, "You're going to be okay. It'll be all right." But no, not one of Mom's family would do anything.
Wow. That's
it was like I didn't even exist to them. It was weird.
But you did what you had to do, right? And
yeah.
It was the right thing to do, and that's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
What else here? Oh yes, when I mentioned that John Hibbs, that your father had died of a heart attack, that was actually, there was no truth to it as per talking to you here. Do you want to tell me that reason there?
Yeah, because I heard the doctors talking in the hallway. The family doctor said it was a heart attack, and the heart doctor said no, it wasn't. There's nothing wrong with his heart. It's high levels of medication in his system. And the family doctor said, "I'm putting down heart attack." And the heart doctor walked away. He wouldn't acknowledge it.
He didn't want any part of it.
He didn't want any part of it. He walked away and let the family doctor sign off on it.
Shit. Now, with the medication in his system there, like, where do you think, well, obviously he was on some medications, but...
He was on high level of drugs, like a lot of drugs. Like Sister Alma told me, she said they couldn't believe the amount of drugs that they threw out that he was on.
There's a lot. Tons, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess that, yeah, so we touched up everything there, all like the little minor things, the discrepancies in the case.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's everything covered. I'll edit this back in here into the episode here, so
yeah,
I'll see how this sounds, and then we'll go from there, Blair.
Absolutely. Whenever you feel posting, you just go ahead.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. It's been really nice to touch base with you too, because
I'm sure we'll talk again.
Oh yeah, no, I'll keep in touch for sure. That way, we can start. If there's any other information that we can go off of too, we can do a whole part of like a part 2, or get some more information out there if you'd like.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely, sounds good to me, Chris.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Twisted Tales.